Welcome to Seminole Sidelines. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a really, really good weekend for Florida State football coaches with official visits. For the softball fans, we've all enjoyed wherever you're watching across the country. Maybe you're even in Oklahoma City catching the Seminoles. They knocked off Washington and will play Tennessee later Monday night for a spot in the Best of Three Championship Series. We will start today's show with Patrick Burnham. I'm Bob Ferranti. We may have a fish guest later. We may not have a fish guest later. We will see on the fly as to what we can catch, what we can reel in on today's show. But I think I want to start with some fun stuff because the college football ballot went out this morning, and this is always a tough job for the voters because we can say these guys belong in the Hall of Fame, and we truly believe it. But there's guys across college football who, they could be in the Hall of Fame too. Michael Vick is on the ballot this year, but the two prominent names, Florida State history, as we welcome in Charles Fishbein too, Warrick Dunn and Peter Warrick are on the ballot. We'll find out later in the year if they are inducted. There's about 12,000 voters. Won't get into the weeds on the process, but let's just talk favorite stories because that's what's fun. When you talk about Warrick Dunn, so many memories come up of him off the field, on the field, what he's done with his foundation too, what he's done in the NFL, minority owner of the Atlanta Falcons. But Warrick Dunn, favorite memories. Pat, go to you first. What comes to mind?
Well, there are a couple things. First of all, his off the field story, that his personal story about his mother, and him ended up being coming from Baton Rouge to Tallahassee after his mother was murdered she was a police officer in there in New Orleans and was shot. And obviously, he had brothers and sisters. It would have been much easier for him to stay at LSU or closer to home, and he chose to come to Tallahassee. And of course, Coach Bowden made a decision to room him with Charlie Ward to give him some stability and guidance, which is atypical, right? You usually don't see a true freshman room with a senior. I've only seen that happen one other time that I can remember. And that's was not even related to Florida State. And then, of course, listen, to go back and try to find a Warrick Dunn favorite play, but the one I remember, and I'm sure it's the one everybody remembers, but I happened to be on the sideline for this game, and it was the game at Florida Field where he caught the pass on the wheel right out of the backfield and took it down the Florida State sideline for a touchdown. And I was standing on about the 25-yard line, and I could still feel in the wind as he would pass by me on the sideline as he was raced for a touchdown. And obviously, it was against Florida at that time. At that particular time, probably as hated a rival as Miami. Miami obviously was still very good, but Spurrier had gotten to Florida at that time, I believe, and so it was that particular rivalry had reached its height. And I remember that play. But listen, I think you remember Warrick's one of those few guys where you remember him as much about him off the field as you do on the field. Not only is he a Hall of Fame football player at the college level for sure, probably at the professional level, he had a great pro career, but he's also a Hall of Fame person. The things that he has done for families throughout the Southeast, whether it's in Atlanta, Tampa Bay, or even Tallahassee, he's got where he provides the home for people. So, listen, I think he's one of those people that has represented Florida State the way you want, in college football for that matter, the way you want it to be represented, not only when he was in college and playing college football, but in his post-college career, not only in the NFL, but what he's done away from the NFL and private business, and for, as I said, for families all over the Southeast and the United States.
I've always said my favorite Warrick Dunn stat is 214 homes, because in April he helped make home ownership a reality for a 213th family and a 214th family. We got a chance to get out there and talk to him and talk to some of the families, and Habitat for Humanity in Tallahassee doing a great job making home ownership a reality. That third down, Ward to Dunn, I believe Charlie Ward has said that was the third read was to go to Warrick Dunn, and it went from extremely loud in the swamp to you could hear a pin drop right after that touchdown because everybody knew what was going to happen. Fish, Warrick Dunn, your favorite memories on or off the field?
No, I just I just remember him, all the big plays he made against, the play against Florida, the play against Miami. I remember how many big plays he made against the Gators. I have a good friend that's a Gator fan, and he was like, man, I can't wait for him to leave because of how many times he basically wrecked their seasons. But he was one of those special players. I think he's underrated in the history of Florida State football, honestly. I think he's one of the top 5 guys, top 10 guys to ever play there. I mean, he was very exciting. He wasn't even a running back, I don't believe, when he first got to Florida State. I think he's someone they moved to offense. They were looking at, like, Mickey wanted to play him at corner.
Yeah, and Coach Bowden grabbed him. That's exactly you're telling us. That's the right story.
So he was a special player, and he always came through no matter what. In any moment that he was put on the spot, he was just a special player. And he's not the most physically gifted guy. You're talking a guy that's probably 5'8", 5'9", probably weighed 175 pounds when he stepped on campus at Florida State. And not only did he have a very good college career, but he had a very good pro career. His stats will tell you that. There's some that would even say he can make the Hall of Fame as far as stats just in the NFL because of what he did and what he did to the Bucs organization. He was a great player, and I enjoyed watching him play. What's crazy is you talk about the Habitat for Humanity. Deshaun Watson was one of the families that he took care of. Yep. And you would have thought that would have made a difference, that the kid would have looked at Florida State. I don't think Florida State really ever recruited Deshaun, and it would have been pretty amazing to watch him play at Florida State after like a Jameis Winston. You wonder, would they have ever slipped if they had someone that special right behind Jameis? But he's done a lot for Florida State. I think he's a tremendous ambassador for the school. And like I said, I've never heard anything negative about him as far as when people meet him, that he's a great guy. And, like I said, he's a Hall of Famer on and off the field.
Yeah, so obviously a very good candidate, a guy we hold in very high regard, and we'll see how the votes shake out there with Warrick Dunn. Peter Warrick, I feel like the most electric college football receiver that I've seen in the last few decades. I do know a lot of Florida fans have raved about what Percy Harvin did on the field. And I think the younger fans out there will say, well, Percy Harvin was this or that. Hey, before Percy Harvin, there was a Peter Warrick who was phenomenal. My favorite play with Peter was not just that Virginia Tech bowl game, but against Louisiana Tech, where he did I think it was almost a double reverse, maybe even a triple reverse on the goal line to get the touchdown. And then Coach Bowden afterwards saying, that's how I drew up the play. I told him, now you're going to run right, then you're going to cut back and run left. And Coach Bowden's post-game explanation was just quite comical of how Peter created that touchdown. But it just showed how elusive and electric that he really was. But Pat, your favorite memories of Peter Warrick?
Well, listen, I really don't have one. I was involved. I was a graduate assistant at the University of South Carolina when he was playing at Florida State. So, I didn't get to see a lot of his games, but it did seem like anytime we put on Sports Center, he was making a dynamic play, a game-changing play, a guy that could flip the field in a split second. As you said, Bob, probably one of the greatest offensive weapons that Florida State's ever had in his program, and that's saying a lot when you start to go back year by year to see who has played at Florida State. And listen, you look at all these other guys that are on the list at wide receiver for the Hall of Fame, and all of them are great. Randy Moss, Justin Blackman, Larry Fitzgerald, Willie Gault, Marvin Harrison, Herman Moore, Taylor Stubblefield, and then of course you got Peter. Listen, you can make the argument that Peter was more dynamic than Randy Moss, particularly given the level of competition that Peter played against versus Randy. But certainly, when you look at that list of receivers, you would have to group as far as ability to make plays and change games. It would be Peter Warrick and Randy Moss, one or two. And what you do remember is him breaking ankles all over the field. It always seems like his hips were going in one direction, his shoulders were going another, and the defender would end up on his ass. That's what I remember about Peter Warrick, and just the crazy amount of plays he was able to make on a weekly basis in college football. And I wish I'd gotten to see more of Peter in person. I think I saw him maybe one time against Miami. It was before his senior year. But anyway, yeah, listen, phenomenal college football player. And for people that went to Florida State at the time, I'm sure for a lot of people, he's the greatest Seminole that's ever played.
He's special.
Yeah,
he's special. Listen, there's so many memories of Peter Warrick. You go back to, you bring up the Louisiana Tech game, but you also bring up the Virginia Tech and the national championship game. Peter Warrick should have won the Heisman Trophy if not for the Dillard's incident. There would have been another trophy inside the trophy case over at Florida State, another Heisman Trophy. He was guaranteed pretty much to win it if he hadn't got into trouble. I remember Leonard Myers talking a lot of trash for Miami, and he basically wrecked Leonard Myers' college career on one afternoon against Miami. And it just so many times, I mean, you look at the Florida game where he basically it was a terrible throw by Marcus Outzen. It should have been picked off. The ball bounced off. He caught it. He made one move and ended up in the end zone. And he pretty much got Florida State to the national championship game against Tennessee with his performance. They always say big time players make big time plays in big time games. He made big time plays in every single big game. There was never a time he did not dominate those games. There was a message board post on one of the sites I saw where people are like, well, Johnny Wilson's better. Listen, I don't care what guys do in the pros. First off, Peter Warrick got injured when he went to the NFL. If he had stayed healthy, if he played in this era where you can't touch a receiver, he would be an all-pro now. He was a special player. He was a phenomenal college football player, and he will be the best wide receiver to ever play at Florida State as far as I'm concerned. While I've been watching him for 40 years, I don't think any guy ever dominated a game like he did at wide receiver. It's not a position like running back or quarterback where guys get to dominate that much. They don't get a ton of touches, but the touches he got, he made them count. And you go back, like I said, to the Virginia Tech game, I think he scored every way imaginable from getting the ball. And then you go back to the Florida game. I think there was one time where Travis Minor had a big run in one of the games. The play was called back, and I think it was it Peter Warrick to Ron Dugans on the double pass. I could be wrong, but he constantly made big plays in those games that mattered. And trust me, the other fan bases knew who he was because he punished them anytime he played against them.
Yeah, so we'll see how the voting shakes out. But again, two of our favorites to watch, two guys very well deserving. It may or may not happen this year, but the way these balloting processes go, it could happen down the road, 2025, 2026, but guys who are very much deserving. And if you're curious who's in the College Football Hall of Fame already from Florida State, we've got that in our story on theosceola.com. Obviously Ron Sellers, Fred Blitnikoff, Marvin Jones making it in 2022. So we'll have the full list there. You also watch some videos of Warrick, Dunn, and Peter Warrick, a couple 3-minute video clips of those guys. So good memories of those two as we see what they do with the College Football Hall of Fame ballot. Now, turning to recruiting, Patrick Burnham was out there on Sunday. Obviously, we had a lot of prospects wrapping up their official visits, 6 in particular. I think the guy who is getting the most love from the fan base, he showed up on Friday. I had to smile when I saw Christian Clark wearing a garnet shirt with the big Florida State logo, because we know the family connections. We know Mom and Kenny Felder, but when a kid shows up to start a visit in a Florida State shirt, it kind of makes you start to wonder how close is he to making that decision. But Pat, your thoughts on Christian Clark? I know you've got a lot of guys you want to hit on here too.
Well, listen, I think they probably improved their position with Christian based on what he said coming out of the official visit weekend. He had been to USC 2 weeks ago, came off that visit. They're no longer on his list. Fish and I have talked about it. You get him committed with Cam Davis. You've got probably the best running back duo in the class of 2024. I would find it hard to believe that you could find 2 better running backs if you could get both those guys in house. Listen, and I'll let Fish talk a little bit more about him as a player. But the thing that we've heard him say now, even after his second visit, he talked about how the running back room, when he came on his unofficial visit, made him feel like he was one of their brothers. There was a brotherhood feeling in that. And then he said he doubled down on that this week yesterday when we talked to him. It feels like home. There's a family feel to the program. And he's been on other unofficial visits all over the country. He's been to Georgia. He's been to Alabama. He's been to Tennessee. I think he's been to Oregon. Obviously, he's taken an official to USC. And he says it's a unique feeling that he gets at Florida State. So, you couple that, the feeling that this kid gets every time he's on campus, along with his having a family history at Florida State. Listen, you worry about distance from home and all that, but I can speak to him. I wanted to do the opposite when I was in college. I wanted to leave Florida and go to Arizona. Distance did not matter to me. It was where I was going to be and where I was going to be spending my time. I knew I could always get back home. And listen, the other teams involved in his recruitment, Texas is marginally close. I mean, Texas is about halfway. But the others you've got Georgia involved. He's going to take an official visit to Georgia still. And, I think the one thing that they did, and I asked him this after his visit, have you had a chance to pay attention to what Mike Norvell has done when he's had NFL caliber running backs in his offense, particularly that he was able to feature two of them. He had Tony Pollard and Antonio Gibson at the same time at Memphis, and both of them obviously are in the pros. One of them's with the Cowboys, and I think Gibson's with the Commanders, whatever we're calling the Washington football team these days. And so they did hit on that on his official visit. And listen, I think that was a stroke of genius by Mike, because what's the natural question going to be by other schools? Well, why would you go to Florida State when they have Cam Davis? And the easy answer is because Mike Norvell has shown that he has the ability to feature two high caliber running backs. So, I think that was fascinating. So they covered that with him. So the whole, they've already got a running back, doesn't seem to be scaring him off. Fish, I'll let you talk more about Christian.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players that they're recruiting in their class. From the moment I saw his first highlight film or video, I was very impressed. I'm very biased towards Florida kids, but this kid is just special. And when you could go outside the state and you go outside to recruit, you better get somebody that's better than what you have in state. Other than maybe the Jarrett Gibson kid that Florida State hasn't really recruited from IMG this year, there's not a lot of great running backs. This kid has all the traits that you want in a special back. And you've already seen what they've done with quality backs. And I don't want to knock a Trayshawn Ward or some of these other guys, the 12 Phillies. They've done their job, but you saw that, early on with the last coach when, with Jimbo, is when he had a Jermaine Thomas and had these guys like Chris Thompson. They were very good, but when you brought in Dalvin and you brought in those type of backs, Devontae Freeman, how much better the offense got. And you've seen the success that Norvell's had running the ball, and we can't say it enough. I mean, his offense is made for running backs. They don't take a lot of pounding. They're very productive. He doesn't wear them out with 30 carries a game. And every guy that seems to step in there is productive. So if they bring in a guy like this Christian Clark, who I think is an NFL back, I can't imagine how much better the offense can actually get when you have him and you have Cameron kid. These two guys are really, really good, and it takes the offense to even another level. I think Florida State sits in a great spot. I don't want to say he's a lock, but I think it's starting to trend heavily towards Florida State's way.
Yeah, listen, I think if you want to try to read the tea leaves, the fact that he is not considering a school that's within driving distance of his home kind of mitigates the, will he, listen, let's say 4-hour flight compared to a 2.5-hour flight, right? I mean, and with the NIL and being able to, have some money to fly your family back and forth, that certainly benefits all schools, including Florida State. But yeah, I think that was probably the one kid I felt like for sure that they enhanced their. I mean, listen, they did well with all of them, right? But as far as I thought, Florida State improved its chances of landing him, and I think it says a lot about Florida State that they were able to. Listen, he's USC is 4.5 hours from his home. He's not going there. The two other closest places he's considering right now are Texas and Oregon. And again, as we talk about all the time, that really, his mom's a graduate, his uncle's a graduate. Uncle played football here. So I think all those things help. He's got family 3 hours down the road in Niceville. So I think Florida State helped themselves with, Christian. And listen, they obviously do a great job with their visits because we heard a lot of positive things coming out of not only the visits this weekend, but we hear them on unofficial visit weekends too. And then, of course, another guy, Fish, that you and I have watched is Nair Daniels, the offensive lineman from Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. He was the first kid to leave, and we'll have his article later. But he's a kid. Listen, he had a good visit. Spent a lot of time with the players. He really enjoyed that. His official visit host was Rob Scott. Listen, these kids probably pay more attention, these prospects and recruits pay more attention to what the players say than they do anybody else. And so, he mentioned that it was nice to get a opportunity to visit with the players and hear what they say. And listen, the players are honest with each other. He said Rob Scott told him that every player situation is different. You may or may, you have to decide whether this is the best fit for you on your own. But listen, he loves the fact that it's family oriented. He said that they stack up, that Florida State's right there at the very top. Of course, they got an official visit, so that obviously tells you that. And he likes that Norvell is family oriented. We keep on hearing this from every recruit, and it's unsolicited, right? We're just asking them what they like about the program, and we keep on hearing the family aspect, that the fact that Mike is trying to create a family at Florida State. And listen, they still got some work to do. Rutgers is right there in his backyard. Shiano's a very good recruiter. They have produced NFL offensive linemen at Rutgers. They've been down for several years. They still got official visits to Georgia and Texas. Florida State did talk to him about playing left tackle. Fish and I have talked a little bit about that on the previous Seminole Sidelines. Does he project as a left tackle or blind side tackle at the college level? Listen, he is going to grow. I believe he's only 16 years old. He's 6'8", 330 pounds. He's going to grow into his body. He's going to be more explosive. He's going to be quicker. He's going to be faster as he grows into he's a large human being. It cannot be easy to be 100% coordinated when you're growing that fast. Fish, your thoughts on that here?
Yeah, he's a kid that Florida State wants to get bigger and more athletic up front. I think when you saw them play teams like Clemson and Florida last year, we discussed this. He's a big kid. I just think they want guys like this. You can see that the guys that they're recruiting aren't guys that need to add a ton of weight. This guy's already there, and I don't think he's a guy that's going to really struggle to lose weight. I think he's already to where he needs to be at. I think he's a guy too, like we discussed before. I don't think he's a 3-year guy where he has to take 3 years to develop. So I think this is a route Florida State wants to go.
Yeah, and listen, he said he'll probably be right before his senior year before he announces where he's committing, and I'm sure that he could also. There's unlimited official visits anymore. He could visit other places, but certainly. They stack up very high for me. I love Florida State was his the one comment that kind of stood out to me, other than that, he thinks that Alex Atkins can help him get to where he wants to go, which for most kids obviously is the NFL. So, but he does have, he's got Georgia and Texas. So this one's not over yet by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been here 3 times now. From New Jersey in less than a calendar year, less than 6 months. So that tells you a little bit, because obviously he's paid his freight on 2 of those, his own freight on 2 of those trips. So we'll see where it goes, but certainly it looks like a guy that's a high priority for Florida State, as Fish said. They did have Edwin Spillman, the 4-star linebacker from Nashville. He classified his trip as awesome. He really likes Mike Norvell and Randy Shannon. He said that he and Randy kind of have an uncle-nephew relationship. The other thing that I asked him about, obviously Florida State's Tatum Bethune is going to graduate after this season. Kalen DeLoach, I believe, will probably leave. I think he's got a year of eligibility if they wanted to use a 6th year, because I think he's got a COVID year he could use. But listen, it looks like they're going to have 2 linebackers departing, which leaves you with, I believe, either 5 or 6 linebackers on scholarship left going into next fall, after going into 2024. He did say that early playing time was something that was important to him, that he wants to move along with his football journey. So I think early playing time for Edwin might give FSU an advantage over some of the programs that he's considering, including Ohio State, Georgia, and Tennessee, who he's going to visit in June. I think that early playing time might be a thing that could swing this FSU's way. But certainly you got to hope that something about this visit resonates with him over the course of the next month because of where he is going. And it's only natural for these kids to be excited when they come out of official visit, whether it's Florida State or any other high caliber program like Florida State. But yeah, listen, he likes the relationship he's got with Randy. He really likes Mike. Called Mike a kind and genuine man. Said the same thing about Randy and loved Randy's experience as far as developing players at Miami, Florida, and now Florida State. So it'll be interesting to see, but it looks like a July commitment for him. I think Fish has disappeared on us again. So we won't ask Fish about Edwin Spillman. But anyway, go ahead, Bob.
Hey, I'll say this, not having seen Spillman on film, but Florida State's depth chart, if DeLoach is gone, in addition to Bethune being gone, the linebacker depth chart is very short on experience. They're going to have to get some of those guys out there on special teams. You're going to have to see what can Blake Nicholson do for you in year one. We think DeMarco Ward is very much a developmental guy. It's going to take him some time to get rolling, even though he was here in the spring. So if a Spillman is excited about Florida State and he's got some really good offers, he's got a chance to go play at UAB for Trent Dilfer, his old high school coach. He's got some good opportunities, right? But if he wants Florida State, this is a guy who could jump in and find some playing time pretty fast in 2024 too.
Well, yeah, because in 2024, your oldest returning linebacker, unless they go into the portal, is going to be a redshirt sophomore, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back. I don't have the roster pulled up in front of me. But I believe if DeLoach and Bethune are gone going into 2024, Omar Graham's your oldest linebacker. I believe that's accurate. But anyway, opportunity there for Florida State. Got to sell it. And obviously, just to go back to Nair Daniels, Nair becomes a bigger target for Florida State. Not that he wasn't a priority already, because Derek Plaz, another offensive tackle prospect that had Florida State in his top 5, committed to Penn State on Sunday. So, the offensive tackle situation kind of has shrunk by at least one prospect. So Edwin, listen, seems like plays at Lipscomb Academy, where Trent Dilfer was the head coach, now the head coach at UAB. He did include UAB in his top 5, top 6, but I think that was a favor to Trent. But he does have Florida State, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. He has not scheduled an official visit to Oklahoma yet. So it looks like right now it's really down to 4 teams unless he were to decide to go visit somewhere else. But listen, fun kid to talk to. You got to like Florida State's chances coming out of this official visit weekend. Now, the kid that Fish and I really liked off film. Now, we like all these kids on film, right? Listen, they've all showed the ability to. But the kid that just jumped off to us on tape, because we had not seen him much of him, is Rydarius Morgan from Phoenix City Central High School in Alabama. You watch his film, and if you're one of those recruiting guys, you're listening to this show that likes to watch film, go jump on his huddle highlights. I mean, the kid can run, he hits, he's got great instincts, closes on the ball very quickly, does not leave his feet a lot to make tackles. The one thing Fish and I said, we have him listed as 6 foot 175. So I did want to see him in person to see if that was, and he is smallish. There's no doubt, but I'd use this an example Friday when I was talking to Fish. One of the best safeties in the NFL over the last 25 years was a guy named Bob Sanders, who was all of 5'8", that played for the Colts. Now one of the things that Rydarius did say at the end of his official visit was that he feels like he's a good enough athlete that he can play anywhere in the secondary. And, to me, he's a guy, because of his physicality, might be good at that nickel corner position where you're playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. They did show him that he's under, they showed him a lot of Jamie Robinson tape while he was here. And they might have shown him that because Jamie was a little bit undersized. But listen, he's a guy that's, if you're a runner and a hitter, you can play linebacker and safety. There's no doubt about that. But, they did tell him in his official visit, according to what he told us before he left, that they're not going to just limit him to safety. If he could play one of those 3 corner positions, they feel like he's a good enough athlete to do that. But yeah, so that was that was the question on him when we watched his film and saw the height and weights. But you watch his film, and he's a football player. And it looks like Florida State likes him enough that, they're willing to work him not only at safety, but also at either the corner positions or the nickel corner position. So, but no, he does have Auburn official visits, Cincinnati and Miami, all later this month. He was supposed to go to Michigan State this past weekend, but obviously came to Florida State. He had a lot of great things to say. He likes what Mike Norvell is building at Florida State. He did mention that. And he would like to make his decision sometime in July, if not early part of his senior season. But Fish is back. Fish, we were just talking about Rydarius Morgan and how much we liked his film. I've kind of updated the recruiting part of it, but just talk a little bit about him as a player.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a miss by the networks. Watching his footage, I was very impressed. Just the explosiveness and how he finishes. You just don't see that. You'll see one or the other, but when you see both, and he has elite traits playing on a football field. So that's something that you want. Some of these guys may not fit the physical attributes that you're looking for, but they're just very good football players. And that's this kid. I think he fits what you want as a football player, kind of like Jamie Robinson. Wasn't the biggest safety, but he did everything really well that you wanted it to in their scheme. So I think he'd be a great get for them.
Yeah, and listen, I think he's another guy by attrition that has moved up FSU's board at safety, if that's what they're recruiting him as, because Jarvis Boatwright, another kid from Clearwater High School who had thought very highly of Florida State, committed to USC over the weekend. And listen, he's still scheduled, at least before he committed, to come to an official visit to Florida State the last weekend in June or June 23rd. So we'll see what happens with Jarvis. But listen, that creates an opportunity for one of these other guys that may not be as highly rated on the board, and Rydarius could certainly be that. But you watch that kid's film, and he's a football player. He's going to play for somebody. He's going to make a lot of plays for somebody. But, listen, he was a little bit smaller than I thought. So when he came out and said that, hey, they're thinking about playing me at corner, I could play any one of the 5 positions, that seems to make sense. So
what did he measure in at? What's his?
I didn't ask him. I apologize about that, Fish. I did not.
If you look, but looking at him, what type of size do you think he had?
I'm going to say he's 6 foot, about 180 pounds.
Oh, that's plenty big enough.
Yeah, and he'll get bigger, right? I mean, he's still a young kid. And then, of course, another safety cornerback prospect that they brought in was Jaquavius Marshall, Quavo Marshall, from Macon Westside High School. He's got great length, 6'5", about 185 pounds. He's going to take official visits to Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Kentucky later this month. He's probably a guy that he would like to go. He mentioned that he thought about committing on his trip, but I think that's one of those things where, he's going to let this thing play out. He's going to go take some visits, make sure Florida State's the right place for him. I could see, just reading the tea leaves, where Florida State wants to see more of him on film, Fish. You and I both watched his film. He plays receiver, but I don't see how he fits at Florida State as a wide receiver. Because they've already got 4 committed. Something would have to happen there. You don't see a whole lot of 6'5" corners rolling around. And I think if I was the staff, I would want to see him play safety in his senior year to see what kind of physicality he has, because you really don't get a good idea of that based off his huddle highlights.
Yeah, I remember FSU recruiting Terrence Parks. I was at their summer camp that year. He had committed at their summer camp. He reminds me of a lot like Terrence. I saw the picture you guys took in front of the football facility. Very similar body types, very narrow shoulders, guys that you don't know how much weight they really can put on. I don't think he could play receiver. I don't think that's an option for Florida State. If he's going to play at Florida State, it is in the secondary. They're going after guys way better at wide receiver. At DB, a safety, if he's got the athletic ability to be able to move laterally, be able to come over the top, help the corners in certain coverages. I think that he's a type of guy you can't put him in a lot of man coverage because he doesn't flip his hips real well. I don't think he's fluid enough. I think he's a big guy. You got to wonder, and you saw him, can he put on the weight and be either an in-the-box safety or somebody that maybe could play will linebacker at Florida State, because those are really the only options. I don't think he's a guy that you're going to be able to just stick back there and put in coverage and allow him to cover a lot of ground. I think if the ball's in front of him, he'll be fine. If he's got to turn and run, I think there's some issues. But like I've said before, I think there's other options. I don't want to knock the kid. Kentucky's one of the schools you have listed. Stoops does a great job of evaluating these guys. So I don't want to knock him because he could be one of those guys that 2 years from now does all the things that you need to do as far as put on the weight, get better. Maybe he's very coachable, and that's why some of these schools are on him. Terrence Parks was a very good football player at Florida State. He wasn't a great one, but he was good. He played on some pretty good football teams. So he wouldn't be a total knock of a player if they brought him in. He could be productive at Florida State.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Kentucky, and Kentucky obviously does a great job of evaluations, and he's also going to make an official visit at Pitt. And Pat Narduzzi and his staff usually have really good defenses with a lot of kids like this, unranked, unrated kids. They find them and they get them to Pitt and they coach them up. So, listen, and this is the kind of kid that listen, if he ends up being 6'5", 215, you're not surprised, right? But, listen, I don't think he's 6'5", number one. But here, no matter what the case is on his size, I do think they want to see how he comes along as a senior. And, listen, I think he would come to Florida State right now. He said he almost committed on the visit, and he said that these other schools would definitely have to leave a big-time impression on him for Florida State not to be the favorite. So, but I think this one will play out. I think this will take a little bit longer to play out, and I also think that's what's going to be the case with the last guy we're going to talk about, which is Wardell Mack, the number 5 ranked cornerback in the country from John Ehret High School, Louisiana. Listen, I think his recruiting fish is going to kind of linger into the season. He's got official visits to Florida and Texas for this month, but he did say that he's probably going to schedule some in-season official visits. So I don't think this is done. And you mentioned LSU and Ole Miss as 2 of the schools that he was thinking about. But he's a tremendous player. I know you like him a lot, Fish. But it does sound like Florida State's in his top 3. He did not get real specific other than to say that he has 2 or 3 schools that he thinks are leaders. But he's only got 3 official visits planned right now, but plans to take more.
What? Which kid? I missed that for a second.
Wardell Mack.
Yeah, I mean, he's a kid I really like. We've talked about this I don't know how many times already. I think Wardell is a borderline 5-star corner. He's the type of kids that play at Alabama and LSU. He's someone I think could come in and play right away. I don't think he'd have a hard time getting in the rotation in year 1 and possibly taking a starting job. These are the type of guys that help you. You can roll coverages over to the other side. He can shut down half the field. What's nice about Wardell, too, I think he's the type of kid that could play multiple positions. You don't have to just put him at corner. You can slide him in over the slot. He may be able to play some safety, free safety, come up in the box, help up and run support. He's one of the better all-around corner or DBs that I've seen on film, and he'd be a great get for Florida State.
Yep. Well, listen, it's gonna be a busy week. Listen, they've got their Florida State coaching staff is down in Fish's neck of the nape today. Fish is going to see all the Florida State coaches down at FAU as they're down there for FAU's elite camp. Florida State, the coaching staff will return right back here on Wednesday for a 7-on-7 and big man camp. We will be out there to cover that. Colquitt County is supposed to be here, which obviously Landon Thomas, the tight end commit, plays that, and obviously Nye Carr, a wide receiver committed to Georgia, who's been on Florida State's campus several times, will be here as well. Friday, we got a quarterback camp. Then Sunday, June 11th, we got the mega camp, and there's supposed to be some official visits in between all those dates. So it's going to be a busy time for Mike Norvell and his staff, and for the Osceola staff as well. But listen, I wasn't here for all this fun last June. You guys didn't let me know that all this was going on when I was sitting up at the hotel in Atlanta. But listen, it's going to be a busy week. We'll be here. Official. We have FAU's elite camp coverage tonight. I have some videos and some thoughts coming out of that, and of course, Bob, I hear there's a couple other things going on around Florida State tonight.
There might be a big softball game tonight, right? Hey, let's talk about this storyline that could develop. Florida State beat South Carolina in the regional, Georgia in the super regional. If they knock off Tennessee tonight to get to the championship round, that's 3 SEC teams that you've knocked out en route to playing for a national championship. That's pretty interesting storyline.
Maybe the SEC should take Florida State to enhance its softball reputation.
I might have found a partial bridge to $30 million from Michael Alford. Maybe I should get a commission there.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've struck gold here. So yeah, that it would be fun. Of course, no doubt Florida State's fan base appreciates a good win over an SEC team any day of the week in any sport. It does not matter as long as it's the SEC. The only team, well, Vandy's good in baseball, so we'd even be happy of a win over Vandy. But yeah, listen, they're on a roll. There's no doubt, and it's going to be a fun watch tonight. It's been a fun watch, really all postseason and all season long. It's such a listen. This team has so much fun playing the game. It's hard. I saw Lonnie's video after the game on. So was it Saturday night?
Yep.
And there's so much joy in what they do, and I wish more sports you saw more people smiling like you see. I mean, and this team handles adversity so well; they never get shaken. But yeah, so you got Tennessee. I don't know if they're going to pitch the girl they pitched yesterday, who threw Ashley Rogers, I believe is her name, but 130. But Bob, I know you've been paying a little bit closer attention to it than Fish and I, but just your thoughts on what they're going to see in Tennessee. And then, obviously Catherine Sandercock has had an unbelievable run in the postseason. Or really, I mean, when has she not been unbelievable during her career? And then, of course, Josie, is it Josie Muffley?
Josie Muffley's catch was
what a catch.
Pretty iconic. Yeah. I mean, I talked to Jesse Warren on Sunday morning. I just said, hey, I mean, are you guys are a club. I mean, immediately I thought Jesse Warren very cool after the win, going to Twitter and congratulating Josie and welcoming her to that club. And if you want to check out that interview we had with Jesse, because it's really cool. I mean, again, 5 years to the day from when Jesse Warren charged and leapt to grab that bunt and then, pop up to her knees and throw to first to get a double play against Washington. Josie Muffley is doing a similarly absurd grab to help Florida State beat Washington. So a little bit of symmetry there that's very, very cool. And we'll see. This softball team, like you said, Pat, incredibly fun to watch. They've made some mistakes. I mean, Saturday's game was far from clean. I thought the amazing thing is with everything that could rattle any of the players, Kat Sandercock looks just stone cold, very cool, very composed. She does, if there's a rain delay, like there was in the regional and the super regional, she's going back to the clubhouse and doing yoga, just going to relax and say, you know what, just roll with it.
Yeah, you would think she had a 10-0 lead in every game she pitches. I mean, it's like she's playing with house money.
I think she pitches like it's pitcher and catcher, and I'm just I think the commentators have kind of said she's not a strikeout pitcher, and she really hasn't been of late. But man, she's inducing ground balls at such a high rate that it's what works. She's getting outs with pretty much. Incredible, I won't say ease, but it just seems very, very consistent what she's able to do with that drop ball and get some ground outs. So, yes, the question always is with Coach Alameda, who is she going to start? I think we can see a situation here where McKenna Reed or Mac Leonard are going to pitch, and if Florida State scores enough runs, we may not see Kat Sandercock tonight. But the luxury again is Florida State has won. They've not had to play back-to-back days. Kat Sandercock is going to be rested. This could be the showdown that we're all expecting with Oklahoma. Still to be determined, because the Sooners obviously have to win too, as they're playing right now. But if it is Florida State and Oklahoma, you have to like that Florida State's been really, really battle-tested against national seeds, against SEC teams to get to this point.
Yeah, and it's I didn't never think that I would ever. I started following softball really about 5 years ago, and I've just gotten more into it. This team is hard not to cheer for. Sydney Sherrill was pretty famous as a softball player herself. She is getting more famous on social media. She's become a social media sensation, at least in Florida and softball circles. She's I think there are a couple other former players that are out there, but the following and all the chatter, the chatter has been about softball here. I mean, even with an official visit weekend, there's about 8 of us sitting down at the Moore Center on Sunday waiting to do all these exit interviews with these prospects, and most of the conversation was about softball and Florida State and how much excitement they've been. And Bob, you might find yourself in Oklahoma City about this time tomorrow if they play well tonight.
Yeah, the trip is in the works, so we're not going to jinx it. But if Florida State does make it, we'll be out there looking forward to it. There's a lot of Florida State fans out there. If you're listening, watching the broadcast, you can hear K-Time. The fans are loud and proud, and Sydney Sherrill has been, I think, the greatest cheerleader for this program. She was running around during the Super Regional, cheering everybody on. She was the Energizer.
She was climbing the fence.
She was climbing the fence. I thought she was going to fall. Thankfully, she has a good grip on. But yeah, she was cheering. We saw Danielle Watson, who was a pitcher, a couple of years ago. She's there taking photos from Oklahoma City. Yeah. I saw Megan King on Coach Alameda's Twitter, getting their Starbucks run. Coach, if you follow Coach Alameda on Twitter, she's always getting Starbucks and walking with some players and coaches. So it's cool to see the alumni making the trip to OKC, and even those who can't. We know they're all out there kind of supporting this program. So. Well,
listen, it'll be fun to watch this game tonight. Hopefully, it's just a single game. I'm learning things. I thought they went to 2 out of 3 in the semifinal. That's not the case. They just have to. Florida State has to win 1 game. Tennessee has to win 2. Obviously, advantage Florida State there, particularly as you said with a well-rested Catherine Sandercock, and I think that hopefully will give Florida. Listen, if they don't use her in game 1, gives her another day's rest. If they were to win game 1 and go into the series final or World Series final against Oklahoma, and I don't know who Oklahoma is playing to get in, but I think that could be a tremendous advantage of Florida State. But listen, it's going to be fun tonight, whether it's 1 or 2 games they play. And I think we all enjoy watching this team play. They play with really, it sounds corny, but they play with an unconquered spirit. They're fun to watch play. And, listen, I enjoyed that post-game video the softball program put out so much because, there was a sense of joy in that room. And they really seemed to, like we say about a lot of Florida State teams these days, they really seem to enjoy playing together.
They do. They're smiling all the time. I mean, if you get the photos, whether from us or another news outlet, Seminoles.com, they're always smiling. They're smiling as they're scoring runs. They're smiling throughout the games. It's a incredibly fun team to watch, and we've enjoyed covering them very much. If you want to check out Kurt Weiler's preview of Tennessee, again, Florida State will play Tennessee tonight, 7 p.m. on ESPN. And again, as Pat said, 1 win gets Florida State in potentially to face Oklahoma. And then, hey, just as we close it up here, thanks to our 1,600 subscribers to the Osceolas YouTube channel. We appreciate all of you for watching. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, appreciate that too. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel if you can. We've had some really, really awesome interviews over the last couple of months. I was looking, Pat, through our channel the last couple of days just to see. I mean, like you mentioned, Derek Plaus, Ash Barker, Kurt talked to Freddie Stevenson. We had a couple softball analysts on last week between Alex Powers and Kalen Arnold. So help our channel grow. We'll try to get you some more interviews, not just with the Osceola staff, guys like Charles Fishbein, but with those in the Florida State community, those sport experts, as well as athletes and coaches. So for Seminole Sidelines today, again, you can join us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern on the Osceola's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. For Charles Fishbein, who has been in and out and all around. We've had him on the line. We've had him off the line. I'm clearly a terrible fisherman. I've lost him yet again.
Oh, well, we've cast him out to FAU. We've cast him out to FAU. He's headed to the camp. So we've just moved him to another location.
He's cast away with the Wilson volleyball on the beach at FAU. Yes,
that's right.
All right. Well, for Patrick Burnham, I'm Bob Ferranti. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you Wednesday.